It is 6:30, everyone, and I wish to thank all of you for taking the time on a very dreary, nasty night to come out. I appreciate it very, very much, and I know the members of the Fiscal Court appreciate it as well. I want to welcome all of you here to a meeting of LaRue Fiscal Court. And we decided a couple of weeks ago that we wish to have a meeting at night to afford everyone the opportunity to be here. If you noticed, we ran 2 quarter-page ads to let everyone know about this meeting. I even mailed out flyers to several individuals, letting them know about the meeting to try to encourage them to be here. So we wanted everyone to have the opportunity to be here and to be a part of tonight's meeting. Any questions or discussion that they may desire to participate in, we welcome it. Let me mention this to all of you. I hope that none of you, any of you that have had the respiratory walking pneumonia type of bug, I feel for you, because I've had it for the last week, and it has really had me down. And for those of you who haven't had it, I hope you don't get it, because I can tell you I've never had anything knock me back as bad as this issue has gotten me down. But we'll make it through this evening's program. You'll notice the cameras around the room. We have them here because we're filming this, and we will post this on YouTube. Because as always, there'll be some individuals who will not be able to come, not be able to attend, and as a result, they can simply click on YouTube and can watch the program on YouTube. They can watch the questions you ask, they can watch the answers. Also posted on YouTube will be an email address that they can email to if they have any questions. So we want to have it available for anyone and everyone that wishes to view it. We'll also put it on a DVD. If you have someone who desires to see the program but cannot access YouTube, let us know. We'll stick it in the mail to them and they can get it that way. So this will be afforded to everyone and anyone that desires to see it. And anyone and everyone that has questions will be offered the opportunity to ask them. And I hope this thing works. It did a minute ago. But I got to point it just the right spot. There we go. As I mentioned, tonight's discussion is going to be taped and placed on YouTube. DVDs are also going to be made available to distribute to anyone that wants them. If you view this on YouTube or by DVD and you have a question, then it can be emailed to judge@laruecounty.org. All you have to do is send it to that email address and I will get it, and we will get you information back. I'll either send back an answer to your question, or if you want documents, I'll scan documents and send them to you. Whatever you desire, we can get that for you. Well, it did work for a minute at least. Okay, here's something very important. All figures presented are directly from county financial statements provided by the Department for Local Government or records supplied by the State Auditor Office. None are estimates but represent hard numbers. And I'm telling you this because I know some of you have heard, oh, numbers are just BS. They're bogus. Don't believe that stuff. Don't lie. The numbers don't mean anything. I'll back every number I've got up with documents. Anybody that tells you anything different than the numbers I give you here tonight, ask for their documents, because they won't have them. But I'll show any documents you want. I'll pull them from the State Auditor's Office, I'll pull them from financial records, I'll pull them from wherever and show them to you. So my numbers are not bogus, my numbers are not BS. Anybody that tells you that is somebody just trying to cause trouble. So you ask me the numbers, I will show you the numbers, I'll show you where they come from. And if you don't want to believe me, I'll give you the Auditor's Office number, I'll give you the Department of Local Government's number, you call them, let them give you the number. And this is going to be quite a thing. One thing here that everyone needs to realize is the jailer is an independently elected official, and he is responsible for operations of the jail. The fiscal court doesn't run the jail, the county judge doesn't run the jail, the jailer runs the jail. However, the fiscal court here has always been willing to work with the jailer in any and every way possible to let him operate his job to in the best manner possible. And there's a reason why, and we'll talk about that here in a few moments. as to why it's so important that we all work together and try to ensure that our jail operates as efficiently and effectively as possible. Now, in order to understand where we are and why we're doing the things we're doing, you have to go through a timeline of events. We have to carry you through the last 3 years approximately in order for you to fully understand where we are and why we are at this point. In 2007, the fiscal year 2007, the LaRue County Jail budget ends the fiscal year with a deficit of $397,800. That's the largest deficit ever for the jail budget. $397,800 is a lot of money, especially for this county, and you'll find out how big it is in just a few moments. These figures are directly from the LaRue County financial statements. These are not some number that somebody's pulled out of the air. These are audited financial statements. You're welcome to see them. What is the jail deficit? Well, the jail deficit is the amount of local tax dollars that must go from the local general fund to the jail fund to balance the jail budget. Inmates in jail are lodged there on state charges, are convicted in state court, and pay their fines and court costs to the state, not the county. Yet we do not receive any payment for those individuals until they are final conviction in court. And the problem we have is that a lot of times a person will stay in jail for up to 2 years, then will be final sentenced, then will stay in jail another 2 to 3 weeks and will be released. Guess who has footed the bill for that entire stay? You and me, the citizens of LaRue County. Even though they were charged on state charges, not county charges, we've had to pay for their costs while they're there. Their medical bills and everything else associated with it. It's not a fair system. That's the system we have to operate in, though. Every county operates the same. Now, some things in the last few years have really driven up the cost in the jail. One is employee cost. Health insurance cost has went up. Retirement cost has went up. Our retirement costs, we're in the state retirement system. Of course, I see a few folks here that's been in the state retirement system. Dwayne, I see you. I know you're benefiting from the retirement system now, and that's good. One of these days I will too. But the retirement system now, the cost is gone up exponentially from what it used to be. We used to pay about 5%. The figure is now, where's Luke at?
16.93%.
16.93% now, or might as well say 17%. Now, on top of that, we have to pay the 7.65% Social Security. We have to pay the other costs. So it's getting very, very expensive, our employee costs. And here's one thing about the retirement. If we are 1 day late, $1 late, it's $1,000 a day. I mean, it's happened more than once that Luke has had to hop in a car and drive a check to Frankfurt to make sure that we get it there on time. Because if it's 1 day late, it's $1,000 per day fine. So we have to pay this bill whether we want it or not. The state tells what we owe them, we write them a check. Healthcare costs for inmates. You've got an inmate in jail, he has to have heart surgery. Guess who pays for it? Me and you. We have no choice. They are under the United States Constitution, we are required to pay for their medical costs. No way around it. So we pay those bills, and any of you that have had medical procedures done, you can imagine what it costs to have a medical procedure done. And the inmates are among the sickest individuals that there are out there. Usually they come into jail and they have severe health issues when they come in. We have to help get them healthy while they're there. Insurance cost, the county insurance cost used to be $20,000 a year for all the insurance for the county. It's way over $100,000 now. And those costs just continue to rise. We're talking about liability insurance, insurance on the buildings, and those type of things. Physical plant needs. Our jail is, parts of the jail at least, are now approaching 20 years old, a little over 20 years old in parts of it. As a result, we have issues we have to address. Heating and cooling systems are beginning to break down. Water heaters are going out. Toilets are breaking down. Johnny can tell you, we've got lines busting in the walls where the copper pipe is beginning to deteriorate. We've got all kinds of issues like that. That's a constant maintenance cost that we have to have. And I read a figure the other day that jails age, got a chicken in the room. I read the other day that jails age 3 times as fast as any other government building based on the wear and tear of that facility. So the physical plant needs run up the cost as well. So there's a lot of things that's causing the cost to operate a jail to go up. Okay, here's a question for you. If $397,800 of your local tax dollars has to be spent on those in jail, how much does that leave to spend, it should be spent instead of spent, on those that aren't in jail? If we've got to spend $397,800 on the, for lack of a better term, bad folks, how much does that leave us to spend on the good folks? You might be surprised. The total amount of real property tax, which is the bulk of all tax dollars collected, that's when you go to the sheriff and you get the bill in the mail and you pay for your farm, turned over by the sheriff to LaRue County for 2007 was $645,513. Again, these figures are directly from the State Auditor's Office 2007 tax audit. You're welcome to see those. You're welcome to call the auditor and get them. But the total amount the sheriff turned over to us for property tax, real property tax, was $645,513. So the amount we collected, $645,513, minus what we had to spend on the jail, that leaves us $247,713 to spend on the good people. Because we have to spend the bulk of our money on the bad folks. That's not really fair, is it? Okay. Let me explain. Okay, Rick. $645,000 is what the sheriff turns over to us in real property tax when you pay your taxes.
What I'm trying to say is you get your school tax.
No, we don't get any of that.
Yeah, that's right, but I mean, it's in there. Is that less than?
Yeah, this is what we get. This is what we get. We don't get any school taxes. We don't get the health department tax. We don't get the library tax. This is what we get. This is the check written by the sheriff to the county. $645,513. And you bring up a good point, Rick. You know, a lot of times, I had a person one time that came into Linda's office and he said, well, y'all ought to be happy. I said, why's that? He said, I just left her $200. I said, y'all will find a good place to spend that. I said, you still got your card? He said, yeah. He handed it to me. I said, well, you see this $200 you just left her? I said, yeah. I said, 13 of it went to the county. The rest of it went to other places. So very little of what you leave in this building stays here. Most of it goes to other places. But most of the time when people write a check here, they think they leave it all here. Very little of it stays here. So anyhow, $247,000 is what we're left with to try to make do. Now, this is why I'm explaining we have to keep a tighter rein on local tax dollars here than any surrounding county, as we do not have the additional taxes most counties have. Now, I know we here in LaRue County feel like we pay more taxes here than anywhere, but I've got to surprise you about something. We don't. In fact, we pay a lot less here than most places, and I'll show you some of it right here. Okay, of course, here's a whole outline of the state of Kentucky. Take too long to go over it all, so I'm going to zero in just on around LaRue County here, and we'll talk a little bit. Okay, let's just go around here and look. Let's start up here. Jefferson County. Jefferson County, of course, has a 2% occupational tax. We have none. We do not get an occupational tax for county government. Jefferson County also has an insurance premiums tax. We do not get an insurance premiums tax for county government. Bullitt County has a 10% insurance premiums tax. We don't have one for county government. Nelson County has an occupational tax. I see Jeff Russ back here. I know Jeff knows that because you have to pay it when you work in Nelson County. LaRue County does it. You don't pay any occupational tax in LaRue County. Washington County has an occupational tax and an insurance premiums tax. You don't have that in LaRue. Every time you work in Washington County and you make $100, you give $1 of it to the county. You don't give anything to LaRue. Marion County has a 1% occupational tax. Taylor County has a 1% occupational tax. Greene County has an ambulance tax. Hart has an occupational tax and an ambulance tax. Grayson County has an occupational tax. Breckenridge has an insurance premiums tax. Meade County has an insurance premiums tax. Hancock has an occupational tax. Ohio has an occupational tax. Butler has an occupational tax. Warren County last year just passed 5 special district taxes. I mean, you can go on and on and on. Of all those counties you see there, the only 2 that don't have any of these is LaRue and Hardin. Hardin County has something that's probably better than a tax, though. They have Hardin Memorial Hospital, and they transfer about $5 million a year out of the hospital into the county general fund as a dividend from the hospital to the county. So they don't have to have a tax because they get it when we go there and have medical services performed. So that's why we have to keep a tighter rein. Hart County takes in about $1.3 million on their occupational tax. We don't take in anything. We take in zero. We don't have an occupational tax. All we've got is $645,000 that the sheriff gave us in 2007 when this deficit first started being so big. And we have to make do with that. We could have done like a lot of counties. We could have said, well, you know, it's going to be hard to balance all this out. Easy thing to do is just pass a tax. But if we can make it without a tax, that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. And that's what we've done. Now, when we talk about the jail deficit, here's a question, and probably some of you are thinking this. The obvious question to ask is, why couldn't Jailer Trumbo manage the LaRue County Jail as good as other jailers were managing theirs? Well, that's a good question, isn't it? So, why couldn't Mac just manage his as well as the others? Well, I got something to show you here. He was actually managing it better from a financial standpoint. Here's going to be a comparison of other surrounding area jails, and here's what it shows. LaRue County, the deficit was $397,800. In Hardin County, the deficit was $2,685,875. In Bullitt County, the deficit was $2,128,190. In Nelson County, the deficit was $1,026,071. In Marion County, the deficit was zero because they house federal inmates. In Taylor County, the deficit in 2007 was $908,449. And in Hart County, it was $300,000. So we can't look at Matt and say, well, Matt, you're just doing a sorry job when you compare you to everybody else. When you compare him to everybody else, he wasn't doing too bad. He was doing as good or better than most. That still doesn't mean we'd be satisfied with it, though. You know, I want that figure to be zero. I don't want us to have to spend anything on the bad guys. I want to spend all the money on the good folks. Now, if you can't keep this jail deficit under control, then the following items are no longer going to receive funding in the budget. And these are some things that some of you all utilize, I know. Soil Conservation District, they received about $26,000 or $27,000 annually from us. It's an optional thing to fund them. We won't fund them anymore. We won't have the money. Parks and Recreation. This year they have received thus far, Luke, $25,000, and we've got another 10 to give them, I think. So the $35,000 is what they're going to get from us. But we won't be able to give them anything. I mean, the jail will consume all of the money. Fire departments, we won't be able to help give them any money. Chamber of Commerce, who does a lot of tourism and things for us, we can't do anything for them. Recycling, we'll just have to shut the recycling program down. It's a net cost to us. We just can't operate it anymore. Such things as Lincoln Museum and tourism, we'll just have to say, hey, the few $1,000s we give you all annually, you'll not get it anymore. Project graduation and other type things like that. You know, we give them money annually to help them operate their programs. But you know what? If that jail deficit's not under control, guess what has to happen? Those things have to go. Now, I know each one of those, you know, you can look at them, and there's some of them you probably think, well, you know, I don't care whether you give any money to tourism or not, or I don't care whether you give any money to the Soil Conservation District or not, but each one of those programs is important to different people for different reasons. And they've got a purpose. And so if we can't keep that jail deficit under control, that's what happens. During fiscal year 2008, another issue arose with the LaRue County Jail. And those issues were personnel, security, and inmate management. I received a call from the Department of Corrections, and they said, we've been doing some inspections on your jail, we've got some problems. I said, let's meet. Happened to be good friends with the Deputy Commissioner. He came down, we sat down and started talking. He told me, he said, you know, with the way things are going there, he said, probably what we're going to have to do is move all the state inmates out of the jail. And you're only going to be able to house your county inmates. A lot of the costs in the jail are fixed costs. You're going to have to pay the debt on that building no matter what. You're going to have to keep a certain number of personnel employed there no matter what. You're going to have to keep certain things going no matter what. You got to keep the lights on. You got to keep the utilities paid. So even if you take all the state inmates out, your costs just don't go down to nothing. You still have a lot of the same fixed costs. So this created a big problem for us. If they moved the state inmates out, not only do we now have a $390-some thousand deficit, we've got the potential for a lot more on top of that, because now we no longer have any revenue from the state inmates. And for most jails, state inmates provide a significant source of revenue. For fiscal year 2008, income from state inmates was $1,303,304. So instead of having the deficit of $390,000, you probably could add $700,000 or $800,000 to that, because there'll be a couple $100,000 maybe that would come off as a result of some costs that you wouldn't incur, food costs and things like that for inmates that aren't there. But you'd have a tremendous bill to pay. More, in fact, than we even take in property taxes. So, what happened? Well, meetings started being conducted with the Department of Corrections to find options to help with the financial standing of the jail and improve security, personnel, and inmate management. And one, I had to do something to try to help on that financial situation. Two, something had to be done about security. I mean, both issues were just horrendous. And I want to say this about Mac Trumbull. Mac Trumbull is a very good friend of mine. Good man. I like Mac. And I think Mac's heart is bigger than any person's in this room. Mac made a comment to me one time, though, and I think it was the most appropriate comment I've ever heard him make. He said, you know, the jail was something I could handle when it was 20 or 25 inmates. He said, once it became over 100 inmates, it outgrew me. And I think that's about as appropriate a statement as he could make. It outgrew him. It became more than he could handle. And he would tell you that today if he was sitting here talking with you. So what I did is I requested that the DOC do a sweep of the jail. I said, look, the first thing we've got to do is clean this place up. Will you all come in and do a sweep of the jail? And they agreed to do that. They brought in their special team from around the state. I think they had brought in some state troopers. They did a sweep of the jail. That was the first time you remember reading something in the paper about the jail finds all kinds, or the corrections finds all kinds of contraband in the jail. They found cell phones. They found hooch, which is alcohol that the inmates are making in 2-liter bottles. They found a lot of different things there that were not supposed to be in the jail. I was proud they did it because we had to clean that place up. But that was the first time that occurred in fiscal year 2008. The Department of Corrections told me, they said, well, the only way that you're going to keep this place open is to do a complete jail performance audit, and we are going to have to recommend that you bring somebody from the outside in and look at this. We don't want it to be one of our people. We want it to be someone who looks at it from a different angle than anyone else. We want them to really go over this facility from top to bottom. And I said, okay, I don't know who to talk to. Of course, you know, the question is probably asked, well, why did you hire the person you hired? And I'll tell you in just a moment. One thing, there was nobody to hire in LaRue County to do the job, because there was no jail expert in LaRue County. At least if there is, I don't know who it is. They didn't provide a name for me in LaRue County. The two names they gave me were both outside LaRue County. So I interviewed both these people. I called them, talked to them on the phone, asked them, you know, what about our jail operations? Are you familiar with it? We've got issues. We talked extensively on the phone. And I chose Joey Stanton. There were two reasons I chose him, two primary reasons. One, he had an extensive background. He had been a local jailer for nearly 30 years. He had served as president of the Jailers Association. He had ran a jail that had never cost the county money. He was a member of the state parole board, and they said that his track record for security was impeccable. The state told me that. They said we've never had any issue with his operations. Also, I invited him to come over and look at the facility. When he looked at the jail, he said something else that kind of sealed the deal for me. He looked at the jail deficit. He looked at the operations. He said, I'll make you a guarantee. He said, your jail deficit was almost $400,000. I said, yep. He said, if I can't cut that jail deficit in half the next year, you don't owe me a penny. That's a pretty good deal, folks. If somebody comes in and says, I'm going to save you $200,000 right off the bat, or you don't owe me a thing, that's a pretty good deal. I think any of you that are in business would probably say, if you can jump on something like that, you probably would. It's money in your pocket. This was money in all of our pockets, because this was taxpayers' money we were saving. One thing Joey made very, very clear though, he said, all I can do is make recommendations. I'm not the jailer. I'm not going to step in the place of the jailer. I'm not going to go down there and direct the staff because I don't have that authority. He said it's going to be the responsibility of Mac to follow through on these recommendations, and if he will, you'll be okay. But if you don't, I don't know whether anything's going to change. So I sat down and talked with Mac, read him the riot act of sorts, and told him, you know, you better do this. If you don't, you're going to have serious problems. And luckily, many of the things that were suggested were followed. Some of the things that Joey did, some of the recommendations. There was a complete rewriting of the jail policy manual. That's a volume that is probably 4 inches thick. It details everything that happens in that jail from the standpoint of how you treat an inmate, to the type of medical provisions that you offer, to the type of food services you offer. Everything has to be listed in that policy manual. And Joey went through it page by page and rewrote it, and then handed it to all the staff and had a training session and said, here's what you got to do. And luckily, at that time, they paid attention to it. It worked. Retraining of all jail personnel. Joey had training sessions for them. He taught them proper procedures as far as how to handle inmates that were unruly, how to handle situations that could be a security issue, how not to open the doors at the wrong time. I mean, there's simple things that you do in a jail that make sense, and if you do them the wrong way, that's when you got somebody that runs out the door and hops in a car and drives off. If you do it the right way, that won't happen. But Joey retrained all the personnel. He brought people in from the outside, and again, that worked. He did an audit of the jail physical plant to maximize bed space. He went through each cell. He reconfigured each cell, laid out the beds differently, laid out the dining area differently. The only thing that wasn't changed in a lot of the cells was where the bathrooms are, because we couldn't change that. But everything else was changed, everything else was looked at. That jail went from 123 beds, I think it was, to 150, Johnny, how many we got now? 155, to 155 beds. So by simply reconfiguring the jail, we were able to add 30 beds. Well, 30 beds is a tremendous amount of revenue for this county. So he was able to do that simply because he knew the best way to lay it out, the best way to make it work, how to gain the most from what we had. And of course, the jail was originally laid out by architects. Architects had done that. I mean, they were the ones that laid out the facility and put the beds in certain spaces. And they put them in there the way the architects thought they should fit. But Joey knew how they should fit in there in order to maximize the bed space, to maximize mine and your tax dollars. And audited the medical procedures. You know, there's simple things that you can do with the medical procedures. Start charging the inmates a copay. You know, if an inmate has to go see the doctor, he has to pay $5. It comes off his canteen. He may not be able to buy a candy bar next week because he doesn't have $5 anymore. That's okay. He pays that $5 and he gets to see the doctor. You and I have to pay a copay when we go to the doctor. Why should an inmate have to pay it? I mean, we implemented several things like that that he saw that needed to be done. And audited the food delivery procedures. We ended up contracting our food service, and part of that was a result of some of the work that he did to study on what's going to be the cheapest and the best way to offer food service. And we saved several $1,000s from doing it. And audited jail staffing patterns and overtime. And Luke can tell you, we used to have a tremendous amount of problem with some overtime. But we were able to change the staffing patterns, we were able to lay the shifts out differently, and as a result, we got all that under control. And audited the jail canteen accounts. The jail canteen had never run a surplus. It was always just barely hanging on, just barely enough money to keep the jail canteen going. And it's now got several $1,000s ahead because you can charge a little profit on those canteen proceeds, and if you keep up with them, you can gain some money, and at the end of the fiscal year, that money can be rolled back into the jail fund. So, simple things you can do that adds up. An audit of the jail work release program. Inmates that are let out, some inmates at least, not all of them, but some of them that are let out to work can be required to pay you when they go out to work. Well, that wasn't working, wasn't happening. But after he rewrote the policy and got it going, it did start. And an audit of the inmate reimbursement program. You know, if a person stays in jail and they have the resources to pay us, then we can go in and charge them for part of their stay. We weren't doing that. But after he got finished, we were. So a lot of things like that, just because he had operated a jail, he knew how to operate a jail, he had come in and said, here's the things we can do that will make it work better. Now, did his work pay off? We spent about $400,000. He said he could save us half. Okay, let's see what happened at the end of that year. For the 2009 fiscal year, which was the following year, the jail deficit was $37,129. Quite a difference, folks. Quite a difference. We saved, and that figures are directly from the LaRue County fourth quarter financial statements. Anybody wants to see them, you're welcome to. You. Not bogus numbers, not BS numbers. If you hear anybody say that, they're lying. You come, I'll show you the numbers. Luke can show you the numbers. I'll get you the state audit report. I'm dealing with you in facts. So the prior fiscal year deficit had been $397,000. In 2009, the deficit was $37,000. $360,000 savings to LaRue County. That's money in your pocket. Because you know whose dollars those are? They're mine and yours. They're our tax dollars. So was it a dumb investment? Was it stupid? Why did you bring some guy from outside the county in here to do this? To save you money. You know, why would you do something like, why in the world would the fiscal court hire somebody from outside the county to come in here and go over this jail and do this stuff? To put money in your pocket. Pretty simple, folks. Pretty simple. If you did it, you know, if this were something other than a jail, if this were a doctor, or if you were hiring somebody to come in and work on your farm that could show you a way to do something different on your farm that would save you $360,000, you'd think you're the smartest guy in the world for bringing them in to do it. We do it on the jail, though, and we're dumb. Sorry, we're not dumb. We did the right thing because it saved you money. It's money in your pocket. And again, these numbers are hard numbers. You're welcome to look at them. They're in audit reports. They're in financial statements, and you're welcome to see them. Or let me know if you want to call somebody, and I'll give you the number that you can call, and you can get them yourself. Oh, and one other thing, too. The $37,129 deficit, we had that much of a deficit, and that was after we had bought 30 new beds, new tables. We had done, what else, Luke? We spent a lot of money. We probably spent $100,000 on facilities and fixtures. So technically, actually, we ended up with money in the bank, but we spent a good chunk of this money putting it back into the jail to buy these extra beds and things that we had. So, but, you know, here again, in hard numbers, that's what I'm dealing with. That's the difference. So jail deficits for 2009. Here's what they look like. LaRue County, $37,129. Hardin County, $2,546,000. Bullitt County, $1,711,517. Nelson County, $832,385. Marion County, $0. They house federal inmates. Taylor County, $970,000. Hart County, $600,000. Our numbers look pretty good. Pretty good. Because if we had just been the average per bed cost of these others. Now, Bullitt County has 200 and some beds. They have close to 100 beds more than us. Hart County has, I think, within about 2 or 3 beds of us. So we're almost identical, same size. Taylor County, I think, has 220, Johnny. Do you remember 230?
In what county?
Taylor.
Federal inmates?
No, just beds. I think they got 225 or something like that.
Something like it, right at 200.
Yeah. But what I'm getting at is if we had just spent the average, we'd probably be way over $500,000. Well, we spent $37,000. Okay, so things are going along pretty good. Things are coming pretty good. We're doing okay. The jail financially is holding its own. I mean, in fact, we've got people calling us. I had the Floyd County judge and a group from Floyd County came over and they wanted to, because they had seen some of the jail financial reports, and they said, you know, Corrections Cabinet said you all have made the biggest turnaround probably of any jail in the state in terms of your financial condition. and we want to look at what you all are doing there. We had counties coming in here from other places to look at how we were doing our jail operations, because the state was using us somewhat as the model. You know, go look at LaRue County and look at what they're doing and take that back with you and you'll learn something. Something happened though, some things changed. One was that Mac appointed a new chief deputy. And the new chief deputy was a bit independent. Good guy, but he was a bit independent, and he decided that, you know, these recommendations were really not for him, and that he would set his own rules and his own recommendations. And it's public record. You probably read about that chief deputy in the paper this week. Some of the personnel and inmate issues began to migrate back in. Joey came and talked to me about it. He said, Judge, I don't know what to tell you. He said, you know, I don't have any authority at the jail, and he didn't have. You know, a lot of people said, why you got two jailers? We never had two jailers. Mac was always the jailer, but Joey was giving him a list of recommendations. Mac, you need to do this and this and this. Mac in turn handed him off to somebody else later on. That's when the problem started coming back. And Joey said, I don't know, you know, this jail's going to get in trouble if they don't change some things. I met with Mac, talked with him. Mac said he had confidence in his chief deputy, and that he was, you know, he felt confident. I told Mac that I, you know, felt that we needed to look at some things. But anyhow, I talked to Department of Corrections and told Department of Corrections, I said, you know, I think you all need to come in and do another sweep of this jail. I said, I'm fearful that there's some things happening there that shouldn't be happening. I think there's maybe some prescription pills in there that shouldn't be there. I think there may be some marijuana and other things that are getting in there. You need to do another sweep of that jail. So they did. And in about a 6-month period, there was 3 escapes from the jail. You know, doors were left open. Doors were not locked when they were supposed to be locked. A lot of things like that happened. And as a result, DOC came down and they said, well, you know, you're right, there's a lot of issues at the jail. And, you know, we're going to recommend that we close this jail. And I said, well, folks, you know, we've been through this once before. We can't close it. We can't afford to close it. If we close this jail, it's going to bankrupt this county. And so, luckily, you know, the folks that were there, I know them quite well, and they were willing to work with us. And they told me, they said, well, we've had about enough of this. And Mac won't listen to us. And here again, Mac's a good friend, a good buddy, but, you know, Mac just decided that, you know, it was time for him to move on. And he said, they told me only one action would prevent them from closing the jail. And they said, you know, your jailer's going to have to resign, or he's going to have to turn the operations over to somebody else. And said, you know, if he decides to turn them over or resign, we'll approve somebody to temporarily act as the jailer to get you over the hump. And so I met with Mac. I first asked Mac if he would consider resigning. Mac said no. He said, I won't resign, but he said, I will be willing to turn it over to somebody else if that's what they've got to do to keep us from closing the jail. And I said, okay, we got to do it. So there in my office, Mac, me, and the Commissioner of Corrections and Mac Trumbo drew up an agreement where he turned over the operations to the person they approved, the state approved, and the state had approved Joey. They said you've only got one person here that knows this facility that we're going to agree to allow to operate it for the next 6 months. This was in June when all this happened. And said we'd agree to let Joey operate it for 6 months until your new jailer comes in office. I said, well, let's do it. So Mac signed the agreement. The administrative duties were handed over to Joey Stanton, and Mac left the jail, and I guess he never came back, to my knowledge. DOC had some specific directives, though. One is they said there had to be a change in staff. They were not going to be in agreement to allow the existing staff to stay. Now, there were several people that I asked them about, and I said, you know, I wish you'd consider keeping this person. I don't think they're a bad person. They may need training. And they said, look, we've been through this before. And they went through everybody's evaluations. They went through and looked at, you know, performance of individuals. And there's really only 3 people that they agreed to allow to stay at the jail and work. Everybody else had to go. I mean, that was their directive to us. Had no choice. The facility had to be cleaned up. Jail was quite nasty. I mean, the jail was dirty. The floors had not been cleaned and taken care of as they should have been for a long time. Security had to be enhanced. You know, we had to improve the security to ensure that the jail would not have these escapes and issues anymore. Stanton followed the directives of the DOC. He laid off staff. And that, of course, drew him a lot of criticism in the community. Yeah, he's just laying off everybody so he can hire his buddies from Grayson County. Well, there's no truth to that. He was laying them off because the DOC said, if you don't lay them off, we're closing this place down. So he had to let them go. Now, one thing you have to do is you have to bring in some experienced staff. You don't, you know, if you lay off your staff, you can't just go out here on the street. I know some people think all it takes to be jailer is somebody that can hand somebody a bologna sandwich 3 times a day. It takes a whole lot more than that, folks, let me tell you. And any of you that have ever worked with someone who has worked in the jail or know someone, there's some jail employees here, they can tell you it takes a lot more than knowing how to hand somebody a bologna sandwich 3 times a day to be a jailer. So Joey said, you know, I've got to find a few experienced people. He said, I don't have to hire all experienced people, but he said, I've got to hire, you know, 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 there. He hired, I think, 3 people that had worked at Grayson County. They came over. 2 people that worked at Hart County came over. One of the people from Hart County, they were in fact from LaRue County. We're building a new house, or getting ready to build a new house here in LaRue County. One of the people from Grayson County, they were looking to move here. So it worked out pretty good. And in fact, in the end, the staff that Joey hired had more LaRue Countyans living in LaRue County working at the jail than were under Max as jailer. So we actually hired more LaRue Countyans in the end than we had working there before, but you never heard that. But that's, here again, that gets into the political talk around McDonald's. So he had to have some experienced staff. He brought in some new staff, people that were fresh, that didn't know anything about jails, but they learned, and they learned pretty good. And security measures were stepped up. The facility was cleaned up, it was painted, it was sanitized, and the staff ends up being a mix of the existing staff hired from other jails and new staff, with 3 of the old existing staff that were able to remain. So that's where we ended up with the staff, and it's pretty good staff. I think Johnny right here will tell you, some pretty good folks there. They do a pretty darn good job, and the state is very impressed with them. The state, when they've come in and done their inspections, they always comment, staff very professional, staff very courteous, staff does a good job. So we're proud of that. And I see some staff here, and I appreciate the staff. Appreciate what you all did, because you all saved that jail. If you hadn't done what you did, he wouldn't be there right now. Something happens now in fiscal 2011 fiscal year. This is after July 1, because we're now in the 2011 fiscal year. Governor Steve Beshear, Senate President David Williams, and Speaker Greg Stumbo asked me to serve on the Penal Code Task Force. Other members of the task force are Senator Tom Jensen, Chief Justice Minton, Guthrie True, Representative John Tilley, Justice Secretary Brown, and Tom Tilley. So the 7 of us compose the Penal Code Task Force. I don't know exactly how my name got on there unless I just ended up being the only person all 3 could agree on. Possibly, but anyhow, me and these other 6 people ended up forming the Penal Code Task Force for the state of Kentucky. And I learned quite a bit by serving on this task force. Sometimes this thing works, and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, on the task force, some things that I learned. I learned about some major changes that are going to be made to the Kentucky Penal Code, which is the criminal laws of Kentucky. And as a result, the number of state inmates housed in county jails will be greatly reduced. As we looked at earlier, the number of state inmates we house produces a tremendous amount of revenue for us. And the number of inmates that were going to be housed there, state inmates, is going to be reduced as a result of some of the changes. Bobby Waits is the president of the Kentucky Jailer Association. Bobby Waits is the jailer in Shelby County. I've got a copy of an email that Bobby sent out. And Bobby estimated the number of inmates to be transferred out of county jails at 5,071. Now that was based on the figures that he had gotten from corrections and calculated. And here again, I'm using Bobby's numbers. These are hard numbers he gave me. These are not something I've made up. You're welcome to look at the email if you want to, just to you'll see that those are the numbers that he gave me. Now there's approximately 7,200 state inmates housed in county jails right now. So nearly 2/3 of the state inmates housed by counties will potentially be lost. And what could this mean for us? Well, on average, LaRue County houses about 120 state inmates. 2/3 loss will be a loss of about 80. So 80 times $31 a day times 365 is potentially a $900,000 loss. Well, again, folks, guess what $900,000 is? $905,200 is more than our property taxes bring in. We're back to this same old thing again, aren't we? Having to deal with numbers, having to make the numbers work. So, this was in probably about September. I sat down with Joey. I said, Joey, we got a problem. We got to figure out something. We're facing this large number of state inmates to be pulled, and we're going to have to figure out some way to make up the difference. And Joey said, well, we could model your jail after what I did in Grayson County. It'll work there, and it'll work here. And I said, what's that? And he said, let's look at a federal inmate contract. He said, it's much more lucrative than state. It will bring in much more money than the state, and actually they're easier to handle than the state. So, what do you think? I said, let's go for it. Let's look at it. Let's see what's going to happen. So I asked Stanton to make contact with the U.S. Marshal's Office. He has worked with these people for 30 years because he operated a program in Grayson County. So I asked him to look at it, to talk with them. He knew who to call. He knew who to talk with. They know him. They worked with him all those years. And I said, let's see if we can make this work in our jail. Now, folks, let me be honest with you. This is a pretty wild shot to ask. Here's a jail, the LaRue County Jail, who 3 months before that, the state had said should be closed because it was so poorly run, such a security risk. And now I'm going to go after a federal contract to house federal inmates. Probably a very slim chance that could happen. Because you don't go from being a jail that the state thinks should be closed to a jail that the federal government would look at in a good enough light that they would say, we'll give you a contract to house our folks there. But we were going to give it a shot. We were going to try. Now, why would I ask Joey to do this? Why didn't I go get somebody else to do it? Well, the federal inmate program he ran here in Kentucky was the most successful program in the history of Kentucky. No other jail, in fact, all of the other jails in Kentucky combined didn't bring in as much money as his program did. His last year of operating the jail, the federal inmate program brought in $7,452,952. So the program he had was the top program in the entire state. There was no program out there that even came close. If you're going to do something, why don't you get the best to do it? If I'm going to paint a car and it's going to be a dandy car that I really like, I'm going to get the best car painter I can get. Yes?
Grayson County?
Grayson County, yes. So, we started to work on it. In October 2010, I told Joey, I said, Joey, we got a new jailer coming in. At that time, I didn't know who the jailer would be. Suspicion, but I didn't know for sure. I told Joey, I said, what we got to do is we got to meet with the jailer candidates and let them know what's going on. So we met with both candidates for jailer. I met with Stumpy Durham one week and met with Johnny the next week. And we explained to them the issues that were involved with this financial situation of the jail. We told them that the only way that we saw that this was going to really work for us potentially was through a USMO or United States Marshal's Office contract. And after we laid out the numbers and looked at it, both candidates said, well, you know, you shouldn't stop. You probably should continue to look at it. And so we did continue to pursue this because we saw that it was an option for us here in LaRue County. The October-November time frame. Me and Joy met with members of the representatives of the USMO's office. We went and met with Senator McConnell's office, and then in fact McConnell's chief of staff even came to LaRue County and met with us to work on this. Got to be honest with you folks, anytime you're dealing with the federal government, there's just a little bit of politics involved, and we had to work on that a little bit, and it all worked out fine for us. So we began the federal contract process. And again, this is kind of a long shot for us. For a jail to be in the shape ours is in, and now going after a federal contract, there's only, you know, maybe 8 or 10 counties in the entire state that have federal contracts. I mean, this is not something that every county had asked for. They just give you a federal contract. You have to really be at the top echelon of jails to qualify. Volumes of information was exchanged. You know, there was stacks and stacks of papers, documents, copies of policies, I mean, on and on and on that had to be exchanged with the United States Marshal's Office. Any of you that have ever done federal government work before, you know what I'm talking about. It's not one sheet of paper and you sign it and it's done. I mean, it's document after document after document. We also met with the ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement officials. They came, visited with us, visited the jail, got a preliminary view of the jail, liked what they saw, liked our location, liked what we offered to do for them in terms of what we could offer, in terms of housing for them. So everything began to kind of fall into place. Then early December 2010, again, this time Luke and myself and Johnny and Joey Stanton, we all met together downstairs in the small courtroom, and we talked about the federal contract some more. You know, I stressed to everyone how time is very important on this. We have to keep working on it because each month delay could cost us a significant sum of money. It could be as much as $100,000. And because those beds, if they're empty and we do not have a paying inmate in those beds, then that's money we lose. And whose money is that? All of us as taxpayers. It's money we have to come up with because the money's not there. In December 2010, federal contracts will piggyback on one another. And what we mean by that is after we've talked with the USMO and ICE and Bureau of Prisons and everyone, then the master USMO contract will allow us to have a contract with these other agencies as well. And that's very good because we really feel like this ICE contract has great potential. Johnny and I have talked about this quite a bit, and we feel like it is something that, that has the potential to bring us in significant dollars here. January 2011, the USMO contract is delivered to LaRue County, signed, and returned to Washington, D.C. Folks, we pulled it off. You know, we went from a jail that should be closed to one that signed a contract with the federal government. Now that's something that just, you know, when you look back now, I'm just amazed that we were able to do that. And it's, in fact, we have the first federal inmate lodged in the jail right now. We've got a federal inmate down there now. It's, you know, and now one thing I'll tell you is that, you know, they're not going to come in down there with 60 inmates tomorrow. You know, we're going to house a few, and then we'll get a few more. Now, ICE has told me that their contract, I got a email today from Ricardo Wong, who is the head of the ICE in Chicago, and he has Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia. He has a large region. And he said that the paperwork would be to him this coming week. Everything looked fine on the contract, and that we had better get ready because they'll be using us. So I figured, Johnny, they're going to be giving you a call and saying, we've got a group of inmates you need to go pick up. So that's got to happen pretty soon. On the February 22nd and 23rd, which was the last 2 days, ICE inspected the jail, and preliminary approves the facility for the holdover. So here again, we're on track. Everything's coming together.
Tommy, what are the charges on federal inmates?
On the ICE inmates,
No, I'm the one that we have.
oh, the one that we have, Johnny,
I'd rather not say, he's under
yeah,
restricted custody.
Restricted custody?
He's, classified, they won't keep him, he's a witness for some other reasons, some other cases.
he, oh, he does? Okay, he's from here, or had this here one time, yeah, whatever.
In this area.
Now, the ICE inmates, their crime is they're illegal aliens. They don't have a, they don't have a crime charge against them. They're not in jail for some type of heinous crime. They're in jail because they're illegal, and they come and stay here until they're transferred from here out. So,
What's the deal on that?
I'm going to get to that. Now, I'll get to that right now, Peggy. The advantages of housing fed versus state inmates. By and large, the federal inmates are a lower classification inmate than state inmates are. When I say lower, I'm talking about charges. Most feds are white and blue collar crime, such as bank fraud, welfare fraud, Medicare fraud, counterfeiting, income tax evasion, food stamp fraud. Those type of things are what a lot of the fed inmates will have. The ICE inmates will be illegals. They're here in the United States and they're not supposed to be. Now, the dollar figures. Rate of pay. The state's going to pay us $29.43 for housing an inmate. Now, I use the figure $31 because there's $1.91 they pay on medical, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But the state's going to pay us $29.43. The Fed's going to pay us $38. Again, if you hear somebody say, oh, all those numbers are bogus, those numbers are BS, I'll show you the contract. Figures came directly from the Department of Corrections and from the federal contract, so you're welcome to look at it. So those are the numbers. We make more money off the feds than we do the state.
Tommy, is that $38 standard for the jails?
No, that is based on I don't know what the proper terminology is. It's a formula that gets calculated, and jails are different based on that formula.
The federal and the state inmates, does the county still have to pay the medical expenses?
No, I'm going to get to that. We'll get to that in just a minute, Rick. Good question. I'm going to get to that. In guard duty, the state pays us nothing. If we have to take an inmate for a court appearance, or we have to take an inmate to the doctor or the hospital or for a test or for a deposition or for something, the state pays us nothing. We do not get reimbursed a penny. We just have to spend that ourselves. Require there be 2 guards with any inmate at any one time. So they're actually going to pay us $36 an hour. We actually make a profit on that because we're not paying our help $36 an hour. So we actually make a little money on this transport stuff too, and I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. But the state pays us nothing. The Fed's going to pay us $18 an hour for each hour that we have to be with an inmate for guard duty. Transport mileage. State pays us nothing. We have to transport an inmate for hospital, medical, court appearance, whatever. State doesn't give us any money. We don't get any money back. Feds are going to pay us 52 cents a mile. And that is based on the federal mileage rate. So whatever the federal mileage rate, which is going up, folks, because our fuel costs are going up, we're going to get more money there. We'll make a profit on that too. We figure that on the transport, guard duty transport, and this is based on the past experience from others, that we'll make probably about $250,000 a year. We think we can do that. We feel pretty good about that. Here again, you're going to hear people say, all bogus numbers, BS. I can pretty well back some numbers up, I think, and I think pretty good. Part of our job is to estimate a budget, and I think that we're on line. Medicals. Here's the one you asked about, Rick, and this is very, very important. Medical. The state pays us $1.91 per day. Medical. If we've got a guy that has to have a $5,000 MRI, the state gives us $1.91. If we have to have a guy who has to have a bottle of pills that costs $500, the state gives us $1.91. The feds will pay us actual cost. So if that $5,000 MRI is needed, the feds will pay us $5,000. If a $500 bottle of pills is needed, the feds will pay us $500. Now, I don't know how many of you all think that you can get medical care for $1.91 a day, but it's quite ridiculous. And that's what the state will pay us. The only exceptions to that are if it's an overnight stay, if the inmate has to go in the hospital and stays overnight, or they are placed under anesthesia. And here's my county treasurer. She can tell you that's true because she's the one that deals with these numbers, and she can tell you we get $1.91. If we spend $10,000, we get $1.91. So, federal contract is much better than the state in this regard. Hit the next one, Bob.
Tommy, what are you hitting, shift?
Hit the down arrow. Down arrow.
Right here?
Right there, yeah. And, I've said this several times. I think it's kind of amazing that we went from a jail that the one state stated should be closed due to its poor operation to one the federal government has approved to house federal inmates. And it could only have been done by all working together on the same goal. And let me say, we're very fortunate. We've got a good jailer. Johnny Copper's going to do a great job at the jail. He's doing a great job at the jail, and we're fortunate that we've got him there. He's going to operate this jail right. It's going to be secure. He's going to do a good job financially. He's going to make sure the issues we've had in the past we don't have for the future. And I'm proud that he's there. Next. This is a direct quote. I wrote this down when he said it. And I don't know, I know Ricky, you might have been there. I'm not sure if any of the others were there at the CACO convention, but Rodney Ballard, who's the Deputy Commissioner, Department of Corrections, made this. They were talking about jails, and Rodney in front of the group, and this was a group of about 400 judge executives, magistrates, commissioners, and judge executives, said a good example of how to turn a jail around is LaRue County. It's went from a jail that shouldn't be open to one that any county would be proud of to call their own. That was the Deputy Commissioner of Corrections. I wrote, when he made that comment, I thought I'd better write that down before I forget it, and I did. So I thought that said a great deal about where we've come in our jail operation. And I just put this up there because this is just an overview of the jail deficits again for the 2010 fiscal year. You'll see everybody's got trouble. Hardin County, $2,900,000, Bullitt, $1,069,000. Nelson, 920, Taylor, 1,411, Hart, 750. But we're sticking out there because we're doing okay. We're doing good. Bob, next. Now, who's the big winner? The big winners are you all, and me and you and everybody that lives in LaRue County, because we're the taxpayers here. And the jail in LaRue County is not going to do what it's done in some counties, and that causes this county to have to pass a special tax to pay for its operations. So we're going to see if that doesn't happen. Big Bob. Now, question. Oh, I've heard all kinds of figures. One guy called me the other day and said, well, I heard y'all paid Joey $100,000 last year. I said, oh, is that right? I don't know who paid it to him because LaRue County didn't. Okay, so what did we pay LaRue County, or what did LaRue County pay Joey Stanton in 2010? Hey, Bob. Directly paid to him. This is how much he received directly to Joey Stanton personally. Bob? $33,703.67. Directly off the financial statements, you're welcome to see it. I mean, you can look at the checks, you can look at whatever you want. Here again, you'll hear all kinds of figures. Look at the financial statement and you can see it. That's how much was paid directly to him personally. Now, there was some more money paid to a company he owns called Stanton Consulting, because when we had to change over the jail, he brought in personnel, performed guard duty, had people staffing the jail that he paid for out of his pocket. He also brought in some jail experts when he took over the jail. They came in, did an examination of the jail. They've made several security changes that, in fact, we're doing them right now as far as security cages. He brought in a jail expert from out of the region. So he paid for all of this himself. And some of it we reimbursed it on, some of it was a contract. Hit Bob. And again, this is from the calendar year and financial statement, that amount. Another time. Stanton Consulting earned another $30,000. Some of that was reimbursement to him. I mean, some of that was where he had paid out, $2,000 and we reimbursed him $2,000. But that was the total amount that Stanton Consulting was paid. So that gives you the exact figures. And here again, Luke has them. You can look at the canceled checks if you want to. You've heard all kinds of figures, wild numbers. I'm giving you the facts. Okay, Bob. Why was Stanton appointed county detective? Had that question asked me a few times. Main reason was to save some additional money. Here's why. Dale Morse and I were talking one day, and Dale had a situation where he had a person that had been locked up, and Dale said, well, I'm going to let him out today. And I said, well, yeah, but Dale, I just saw, you know, we spent several $100s on that person last week. We took him to the doctor. He said, yeah, if I had known so-and-so about that person, we would never lock them up to start with. And I said, well, we don't need to be locking people up that don't need to be locked up. He said, well, if I had somebody that could help keep them from being locked up to start with, I wouldn't do it. One thing led to another, and I said, why don't you let Joey do some of that? He can do a little investigating for you. If a person doesn't need to be locked up, we don't need to lock them up and spend several $100s on them. He said, I think that'd work. Well, state law gives the county attorney the authority to appoint a detective. That person reports back to him and gives him information about individuals and why they should or shouldn't be charged or whatever. So we've already seen it pay off. We've had a few people that would have gotten locked up that didn't get locked up. And once they're locked up, folks, if they go through DTs or they go through have chest pains or anything like that, we pay the bill. And so this way, we don't. Okay, Bob. Overview. Just going to wrap it up here a little bit. LaRue County faced a potential loss of about $900,000 in revenue. Securing the federal contract has potential to bring in probably 40 ICE inmates, 20 or more federal holdovers, a transport contract, hit it, Bob, and revenue. And to be honest with you, I think the potential is there to be significantly more than this. But I tend to be a little conservative. I'd rather estimate a figure here and get this. But I think we're safe at that, looking over the next year or so. Hey, Bob, I may have one other thing. One other thing to let you know about, an interlocal agreement is being drawn right now. I've been talking to some counties outside the region here to duplicate some of the things we've done here in LaRue County. And we're going to have the opportunity to make some additional dollars and save the additional taxpayers some money here through this interlocal agreement, because the things we have done here are going to be shared with some other communities. I've told you about others that have come in here and looked at what we're doing and like what we're doing. Well, we're going to help them, but we're going to get paid for it. And that's going to be money back in your pockets, because that's not tax dollars we have to reach in and pull out. Hey, Bob. Bob Sims info. I had to throw this in. I just had to throw this in. I'll tell you why I threw it in, and I hate that Joe Pierman's not here. Joe had called me the other day, and we chatted a little bit. And, of course, might as well just be totally honest. Joe and Bob don't get along real well. And I don't know what it is. To be honest with you, I think they're probably too much alike. But, okay. But I just put this in here because I put that up there, and I was hoping Joe would be here, and Joe can watch this on YouTube. I was hoping Joe would be here because Joe said, well, people don't like it that Bob Harry is from Hart County, and I didn't say much. Bob has lived in LaRue County 7 years. Bob owns a small farm between Oaks and Heights and White City, has for 7 years. Bob's son has lived here 15 years. Bob's daughter-in-law's lived here her entire life. Bob's granddaughter was born here. Bob votes here. Bob pays his taxes here. Bob has lived here in LaRue County as long as Abraham Lincoln lived here in LaRue County. It's a funny thing, we accept him, don't we? Well, huh? So I just had to say that because somebody says, well, Bob's Hart County. He was born in Hart County. He lives here now. And so if we can't count him, I don't guess we can count Abraham Lincoln or a lot of others. And I'm going to count Abraham Lincoln, folks. Okay, now, we're open for discussion. Any questions anyone may have, questions, comments, whatever. I'm ready for you to ask them. Again, we've got our video folks here. We'll YouTube you, and you get to be put on the computer. So, anyone have questions? Yes, Lynn.
Tommy, tell me a little bit more about the commission you were on. I got a little confused.
Okay, the Penal Code Task Force, Linda, what that involved, like I said, it involved the 7 individuals you saw there, and the Penal Code, there's a a big change underway nationwide to change the way that many of the criminal laws are done. There's a trend going toward more treatment, especially those that have drug and alcohol problems, more treatment rather than incarceration. Kentucky, the legislature has somewhat adopted this stance that that's where we need to go. And so as a result, a lot of the people we now house in jail on Class D felony charges that we get paid for housing them, they will no longer be housed in jail. They will be going to treatment programs. And of course, the effort is honorable to try to break the cycle of drug and alcohol abuse. You know, get this person off the drugs, get them off the alcohol, where they don't keep coming back. But that's where the changes are coming in, and it's going to be a significant changes because there's only one classification of inmate that county jails, by law, hold for the state, and that is Class Ds, and which are the non-violent, non-sexual. I mean, it's the lowest level of felony charge, and so as a result, you know, a lot of those are not going to be held by counties anymore.
Okay, so you all weren't the decision-making board?
No, not really. I mean, the decision, a lot of the decisions were already in place. The Pew Center had developed a great number of recommendations and that sort of thing. And so, I mean, it's like I tell people, this is pretty much a freight train going downhill, and we just needed to hop on and try to capture as much as we could along the way. And there's some things in the bill that will help counties some. I mean, there's a credit for outstanding fines and court costs that will help. There's a credit toward a bond fee that will help. So there's some things in there that are plus for counties. But the number of inmates we hold will drop off. And that will be a loss for counties in terms of revenue.
Okay. So you were passing the information along to other. How exactly did that work? What? Well,
the Pew Center brought all of the information to us and with all kinds of recommendations and all kinds of information in terms of what had been done in other states. I think Texas, Oregon, Washington State, I'm trying to think, Arizona were some of the primary states that they modeled. And it was pretty much a fact-finding group where we would study the facts to see, you know, you have option A or option B, which one worked best. And
so some of them, are they funding it though, the treatment programs?
Yes, they do have to take a percentage of the savings that they garner and roll it back into, yes. And that was another thing that our responsibility was to ensure that legislation was passed, the money goes back into the program. Because otherwise, they just say, well, we're going to save the money and forget the treatment. Well, that was the whole purpose of it. Yes?
Tommy Mike was jailer for 22 or 24 years. Are you telling me up to a year and a half ago, about the time Stanton came in, that you didn't realize there was a problem in that jail and that we had to get a specialist to come in and figure it out?
There was not as many problems in the jail. You probably weren't here when I spoke and talked about Matt commenting that when the jail was a smaller jail, we didn't build onto the jail until 2000 or 2001. And up until that time, Mac's comment was, and I thought it was a very appropriate comment, that when the jail was a small jail, he could handle it. But when it got to be a big jail, it outgrew him. And so there were not problems that he couldn't handle up until that time. And when he made some changes in some staffing, that's when real problems began.
Tommy might hit a little bit on what's still on the bridge.
Well, of course, drugs are the biggest issue. Methamphetamine is quite a big issue here, and things associated with it. Not only the drugs, but people who are stealing to get money to have drugs. You know, it goes on, and it's a cycle, Ronald Dale, and those of you in the room that are in law enforcement know about that, and it's making it worse. Yes.
What is Mr. Stanton's salary versus what you paid him from the jail to being a detective today?
He gets no more.
It'd be the same $33,000?
He gets the, well, it's the contract that's been in place, so his salary has not changed. He does not get any extra money for being
But
detective.
we've never had a county detective?
No. Never had one. So we're getting one for free now, because he's not getting any more money for it.
How do you figure it's for free if there's a salary to be paid?
There's not a salary to be paid for detective. He agreed to do the detective salary at no additional compensation.
Is that 33, or is that 33 plus 30?
Well, he gets, let's see, it works out about $5,000 a month.
Is there nobody in the county qualified to do that job?
No. If there is, tell me who it is.
I'm not sure.
You're talking about doing a federal inmate program?
No, I'm talking about the state, county detective.
Well, there may be. If somebody will do it for free like he will, I will certainly let him do it. I'm sure he would. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to let somebody do the job for free if they'll do it like he's doing it for free.
Tom, when we was kind of first looking at the federal thing, we kind of envisioned the Martha Stewart types and stuff. With the ICE program, Bureau of Prison, is there going to be additional training, like bilingual and stuff like that with staff?
There probably will be, and I know Johnny and I talked about today, we're probably going to have to look at hiring somebody who can speak. Now, the thing about it is, Scotty, most of the people who are in jail are bilingual, or they have someone in the cell who can speak. I mean, it's usually not a tremendous issue, but we will need to have somebody that can speak.
I can tell you from experience, I work at a pick-pack warehouse in Shepherdsville, Kentucky, and it is a major, major issue. At this point in time, just within the last 3 months, they've overcome us to the point that they don't comprehend
What you're
English
saying?
at all.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do that. We have to do that in court now. We have to have interpreters that will come in and talk to us in court. That will help interpret. And now, one thing about it, as an ICE holdover, we're not going to be holding people here for weeks at a time. Most of these people, I think they call it a 72-hour, don't they, Johnny? It's going to be a 72-hour holdover. So most of them are going to come in one day and then leave the next day.
You've still got the legal obligations
Oh, sure. We'll handle that.
to treat them properly if they're not there but an hour.
Yeah, we'll handle that.
You've got a federal union, and you said they pay $18.
Excuse me?
You've got a federal union, they pay $18 an hour per guard to watch
Yes.
if he's got to go to hospital.
Uh-huh.
All right, say he's got to spend 2 days. Keep a guard on him for 2 days.
2 guards.
2 guards.
We keep 2 guards on him at all times.
All right, say he's got to spend 2 days. Keep a guard on him for 2 days.
2 guards.
2 guards.
We keep 2 guards on him at all times. And they pay us $18 an hour per guard. If he's there a week, whatever it is, we bill them, they pay us. That's what the contract says. Yeah, you have a question? Okay, any other questions? Well, folks, we appreciate you all being here. And like I say, judge@LaRueCounty.org. If you've got any questions, shoot me an email. Pick up the phone and call me, 358-4400.
I've got one other question.
Yes.
So is this appointment as such, as him as county detective, is it a done deal to where the public has no say whatsoever? I mean,
Well, I'm sure he's more than willing to give it up if somebody else will do it. If we can find somebody that'll do it, and will do it for the same price that he's doing it for, which is nothing.
Some of the other counties have their own detectives.
No, man, I don't understand. You said a while ago it was free, and then you say $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year.
His contract, the detective thing has nothing to do with the contract with him on the federal inmate program, Gary, has to do with getting this federal program up and running. Has nothing to do with detective. The detective's not mentioned anywhere. He just offered to step up when we were talking one day about the county detective situation. He offered to step up and he said, if you all need me to do that and I can save you some money, I'll be glad to do it. So he's not getting paid anything for county detective.
How long is he going to be getting the federal thing set up?
Well, we're going to wait until we see how the program we get it all done, I mean, get it in place.
So you don't.
But that is funded by the county?
Actually, it'll be funded through the program itself, because we're going to generate revenue from the program. The program's going to generate about $1.2 million in revenue. And, as I also mentioned to you, there's an interlocal agreement that we're working on that they're actually going to pay us for him to go work in other counties in eastern Kentucky, and we're going to make a profit off him. In the end, I think our expense for his service will be very minimal, if anything. But here again, we'll know that when we get that interlocal agreement signed.
Tommy, it's my understanding, the best that I can figure, I'm not a real smart guy, but it is my understanding that our jailer is the only one that can accept or be in charge of federal prison. Joey Stanton or you, either one, cannot do it. It has to be the jailer. And I think the county has elected a comparable jailer. He can handle it. Let's give him a try.
But I'm willing to give him a try. I have no problem with Johnny doing it.
Well, am I wrong? Can Joey inmate get federal inmates and house them himself? Or does he not have no jurisdiction?
I don't think, Greg, anybody's ever said he's going to try to house himself. He don't run the jail.
I know it, so what's his need? What's the need for him?
Well, let me ask you, tell me about the coordination involved with federal inmates. Tell me about it. Tell me about what's going to be needed to go get federal inmates and
The
follow
jail
it.
is up to standard, which
No,
I
I'm not talking
understand
about
you're
that.
working toward that.
I'm talking about the coordination.
And the jailer has to accept them and sign for them.
Well,
That's the only two big things
To
that
be
I can
honest with
find.
you, Greg, you're talking about something you don't know anything about.
Okay, maybe I ain't. And the $1.2 million you're saying that's generated, is that above and beyond what the jail's doing now? Or is that just a figure that you throw out there to make it sound good?
Well, it's like I told you, I can back all my figures up with numbers. What do you go back yours up with?
Is that above and beyond what the jail's doing now?
Above and beyond.
1.2 million ahead of what we were last year, next year, right?
I doubt there'll be 1.2 million. The 1.2 million is going to fill the gap lost by the state inmates. If you'll let me talk, Greg, if not,
I'm sorry.
you know, the 1.2 million will be the revenue we will take in to offset the loss of state inmates. Now, you remember the figure I told you, the loss of state inmates?
And that's the meth heads and the thieves that we're going to let out of jail to get the federal inmates in, right?
Well, now don't start saying that, because we're not letting anybody out. We don't have, Johnny Cockrell has nothing to do with the court system and who gets out of jail. He has nothing at all to do with that. So to insinuate that somebody's going to let out meth heads here to get federal inmates is wrong, and that's very wrong. You understand it's wrong too. I can tell by the way you're shaking your head. Okay, other questions. You know, I think, folks, it boils down to this. Do you think we're doing the wrong thing by investing money and spending a few dollars and getting a lot back in return? I mean, looks like to me it's paid off. If you think it hasn't paid off, tell me. Let's talk about it.
It hasn't had time to pay off, Mr. Trump.
I'm talking about the program we built up to this point, and we're going from this point on. I mean, tell me what you think. That's why we're here. Yes.
Tommy, is Johnny, I'll go to Johnny or without Johnny here, will he have to take extra training or something for the?
I don't think he will. Now, his staff that will be transporting these inmates will have to have training, and I know Joy's going to do some of the training for them too, because there's training that they are required to have to be able to, you know, transport these inmates, do them in a proper manner, and all that sort of thing. So there'll be special training for them.
Has the transportation that we've had in the past not been sufficient?
No, it requires a totally different type of transportation for federal inmates than it does others. The vehicles themselves have to be equipped differently. The inmates have to be shackled differently. They have to be restrained differently. So it's altogether different than we used to do. Yeah, great.
Are the federal inmates, are we guaranteed federal inmates, or is that a business system?
Oh, it's not a bid system. No, the, Mr. Ricardo Wong, on the phone the other day, talked as if he thought we could have 20 or more ICE inmates here in very short order.
And that's illegal immigrants?
Yes,
We're trading in for state inmates.
No, and you're interjecting words there that aren't correct, Greg.
You said
We're not trading inmates. That's improper terminology. The state is lowering the number of state inmates that will be housed in the county jails, and as a result, we're going to have vacant beds, and as a result, we need to do something to fill those beds, to garner some money, to keep having to go into your pockets and ask you for more money to balance the county budget.
Who's gonna house the state inmates then? If we're gonna lose, if the counties are gonna lose them, where are they actually gonna be housed?
State prisons. State prisons will house them. Yes, Rick?
How many counties house federals in?
I don't know the exact
Does
number.
anybody know?
I think there may be about 10, but I know the majority do not. Yes, Tom?
I know of Joey, and I think he's done a wonderful job, and I think we owe him a debt of gratitude for his effort for the people here in Lee County. I say that what I mean personally. I do have a question though about, does he actually work for Morris's office? I mean, is he employed by them? And
No.
no.
Just Dale will call him and say, hey Joey, I need you to check on this. I've got a complaint. I may want to do a warrant on this individual, but I don't know whether we ought to lock him up or not. Check him out. And then Joey will check it out and do a report back to Dale, and Dale will determine whether this person should be incarcerated or not.
So he doesn't actually work for anybody, he just...
Well, he doesn't. He doesn't. I mean, Dale kind of gives him direction, but he's not getting extra compensation for doing that job. He volunteered just as we would volunteer to, go downtown and pull weeds out of the brush downtown. I mean, he volunteered to do it if it would help save the county some money. So that's.
Well, for whatever, I think that we should say thank you to Joey before anything else, because who else would come and help us and help provide some of the benefits that we now receive if it wasn't for Joey Stanton?
Well, Joey, I appreciate the work Joey's done for us. Joey has gotten paid for his work. It's not like Joey's done it for nothing. He has gotten paid for doing his work, although I do know that he was offered more money to go to another county and do work for them. And he said, I want to stay and finish up what I'm working on in LaRue County. So I do appreciate that.
Is he on a contract basis with the
Contract can be canceled with 30 days notice at any time. Okay, other questions?
Is
Comments?
it likely to happen if our new jailer seems to be able to handle it?
Well, there's a chance it could happen, yes. I mean, there's anything's possible, Greg, depending on how things come together. I mean, we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Yes, Bob?
Does the fiscal court make that call, or do you make that call?
No, fiscal court makes that call. I'm a member of the fiscal court. The fiscal court makes that call, yes.
The fiscal court didn't hire or name Joey County detective, that
No.
kind of Dale's officer.
No, that's Dale. Dale Moore solely has that authority. Are we? Okay.
Tommy,
Yeah.
doesn't Dale already have an assistant? The county has to pay an assistant to help Dale already?
No, we do not. Dale pays that out of his own pocket.
He pays that out of his own pocket.
Mm-hmm. It's an assistant county attorney. It's not somebody that does any type of research for him, but it is an assistant county attorney. Okay, other questions? Well, folks, thanks again for being here. And if you have any questions, you can give me a call, you can send me an email, let me know. Thanks.